Bo Nickal, fighter in the UFC, was doing a podcast with Joe Rogan, commentator in the UFC. It was Joe's show. So Bo's a guest on the Joe Rogan program, and they had a very fun talk. Like, Bo has a real lightheartedness, and he has a real sense of humor. And he's starting to loosen up a little bit. I caught a piece, it was Bo with Jocko, but it was an extended piece. I mean, these guys sat and visited for an hour and maybe more. And that was one of the first times, for whatever reason, I think it was out of respect. I think Bo respected Jocko so much. But he was really able to kind of loosen up and just speak a little bit. And Bo's got just a little hint of promotion in him. I like that. He's got a little hint where he's always working. He's looking for something. He's putting himself over. He's finding an opponent. He knows not to compliment him too much, but to say their name. Like, there's a degree of it, but when he just drops everything and just starts talking, he's a very pleasant person to listen to. And on the Joe Rogan program, it had come up that Bo has only been at it for 2 years. So it doesn't feel that way, though, does it? It feels like he's been in the UFC for 2 years. I mean, it felt like he did the Dana White Contender Series for about 4 or 5 years, and then he got into the UFC for another half a decade. I mean, right? It does. It feels like he's been around a while. And I start doing the math, thinking, man, I wonder why Bo would say that. What an exaggeration. And then it dawns on me, the 2020 Olympics didn't take place until 2021. So Bo had his last match at the final wrestle-off for the 2021 Olympic team. It was a tournament for Bo, and then ultimately he wins the tournament, and then the next day, the way wrestling works is you go 2 out of 3, right? Just to make sure we want to always put the best guy as our representative so that the country has its best shot. So in wrestling, there's things, maybe you get lucky, maybe something weird happens, maybe you get a weird call, but you can also get caught on your back. There are times, particularly in freestyle and Greco-Roman, where it's known as a touch fall, which means if your shoulders touch, the match is over. The collegiate or high school situation, which you're probably more familiar with, you got to get him there, you got to hold him for a count of 2, and then it's a fall. But it's just a very different thing where you won't always have your better wrestler, right? So you go 2 out of 3. That's my only point I'm trying to make to you. So Bo goes through an entire tournament. The next day he's got to go 2 out of 3 with the best guy on earth, David Taylor, who was not only a teammate of Bo's, but he was also a coach. So whenever you have a coach, you now have a mentor, you now have somebody that you look up to. It's a very hard guy to beat. The guy that helped you and trained you and pulled you up and you tried to make proud. It's a very hard guy to beat, and Bo was very competitive. And David beat him. I believe it was a combined score of something around 11 or 12 for Taylor and 1 point for Bo. I'm close enough. David goes off and he dominantly wins the Olympic Games. He's won the World Championship since, and he's currently #1 wrestler on earth. But Bo then goes into MMA, and it dawns on me, wait a minute, that was 2021. It's only 2023. Like, yeah, Bo's only been doing this for 2 years, not to mention he's been competing for a while. Bo has excellent management. He got in with Malky from the beginning. And if you get in with Malky, your floor, your bottom is pretty damn high. Like, if Malky gets busy and sidetracked and his plans don't come through, you land in something pretty damn high. Malky doesn't have any contacts that are anything other than high. Like, it was just one of these good spots. Like, everything is going well. But if you look back at it, it sure hasn't been that long. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, man, is Bo the best talent we've seen in terms of, snap your fingers and boom, he can play? Is he the best that we've seen since Jon Jones? And if you go back and look at it, and Jon Jones did something like 6 fights in 3 months. It was like he was really getting them in, and he was really staying busy. He goes on, and we knew from day one how great he was. The problem with Jon is for 2 and 3 and 4 fights, the moves alone, the techniques alone that Jon was doing, we'd never seen. I mean, Joe Rogan used to call Jon Jones fights and not know how to tell the audience what it was he was doing because Jon was doing moves that nobody had seen before, including Joe. Like Joe was if Joe would have given some of those moves a name on the fly, that's what we would just be calling them because there was no other name. So it was almost hard to know that Jon could win a world title. Like he would look so good. Oh, come on, he's a one-off. Remember when he caught Stephan Bonner's leg and then he spins and elbows him, but he's a college wrestling champion, right? I mean, come on. He made that up. He got lucky. Whatever. But you thought this a few times. You like keep seeing this over and over. And I swear to goodness, that's almost what it's like with Bo. You know, Bo does the contenders match. He lands a strike. He takes the guy down, but then he ends up pulling guard him. And ultimately, when he finished, he was on his back. Oh, my goodness. Prior to this, somewhere along the way of winning 3 NCAA titles and a university world title, he's a minute and a half away from beating Gordon Ryan in a grappling match. You guys remember this? It's a beautiful event. Whoever did this has like never done an event again. I've never seen, I would remember their production. It was very unique the way they had this thing set up in the mat. It was just this beautiful thing. And they had banned heel hooks. They banned heel hooks and they gave some kind of a scoring system for a takedown. So Bo almost beat him. Bo had the points. He almost beat him. He's running the clock. I'm just sharing with you. I mean, could you imagine a guy with no belt? He didn't have a white belt. He didn't have a blue belt. He has no belt whatsoever. Almost had a win over Gordon Ryan. Can you understand that? So now you start to at least understand the kind of natural you're with. Now, when Bo says I've only been at this 2 years, I would normally dismiss that because he was such a success as a wrestler. I mean, this guy was amongst the best wrestlers in the world from the very first time I saw him. And I saw him for the first time at 15 years old. And I saw him at 15 years old beat Mark Hall, who was the world champion. So, I mean, Bo has been amongst the best, right? And normally I would dismiss what he said, but I can't dismiss it because it's not the 90s anymore. Wrestling is not enough. Wrestling's not even king anymore. Wrestlers are king. Wrestlers learn to grind and work hard. They're not afraid to lose. One of the biggest differences with wrestlers and every other sport out there, a wrestler is not afraid to lose. He will go out of his way to get beat. He will fly to the other sides of the world, and his dad's got to work an extra job just to get him there because there's a guy that somebody said could beat him. He's trying to get beat at all times, a wrestler. Take on 4 or 5 guys in a day and then start doing exhibition matches while his arms hurt. Trying to lose. It's a very different mentality. So wrestlers are still king, but when's the last time you saw wrestling work? If you saw wrestling work, what did you see? I guarantee you all have the same answer. A double leg. Okay, right. If the only takedown that works anymore is a double leg, then wrestling doesn't work anymore, right? It's one of those things, but that comes back to Bo's point. He's only been at this 2 years. This is a sport in and of itself, and he did pick it up in record time. And the fact that he's landing hands right on the regional scene, he was knocking people out. He wasn't taking them down and ground and pounding them. He gets in the contender series, he finds a submission, but he finds a submission from his back. Like, he found a way to show how versatile and dynamic he could be. And it really is a massive gap to be able to close. And when you bring the great wrestlers over, and wrestling, which is the most cardio-based sport in the world, you're instantly going to believe have an advantage in the cardio, but they don't. It's usually what bites the wrestler in the ass. When wrestlers come out, no matter how great they are, what will generally cost them is fatigue. Because it's a very different thing in wrestling to score your points and stand your ground. To score your points, stand your ground, and eat up clock. That's very different than having to hold a high pace steady because the guy's not trying to score points on you. He's trying to hurt you. It's a very different thing. And most wrestlers, even dominant early, will reach an exhaustion level, which will then cost them the match later. Whether they just simply can't get up and it's a TKO, or whether they find their way, like most guys, into pretend that they were caught in a submission. And so that's one thing that Bo has never had to deal with. And once you do it a few times, all of a sudden it's not a problem at all. And Bo's able to get that experience. But when you do talk about when he broke it down that he's only been at this 2 years, if you go a step further and go, well, what did those 2 years look like? Boy, you must have really been dedicated and busy. What was he? I don't know. I mean, I know that he knows hard work, and I know that he could get into the room. Chael would still let him in the room and welcome him and make sure he was well conditioned. But I'm just sharing for you. I mean, I remember it. Bo was going out to Florida. Masvidal was his guy. So he's getting whatever workouts he can in Florida. Bo's married. I mean, he's got a family back home. It's not like he was staying in Florida too long. He's headed back. So, I mean, what was this, like 2 weeks out in Florida, and then he's back home and trying to perfect what it was he learned, then he's going back. It's one of those things where the balance for the great ones is very different at times. I knew a guy that had done something similar. Right out here in Oregon at a kids team. He was in a room with children, 8 and 9 and 12 years old, 15. Older guys would be high school senior. They'd be 18 years old. And this guy, his name's Travis West, this guy makes an Olympic team. And what he would do is he'd go out to Colorado Springs for 1 week a month, the Olympic Training Center, and he'd absorb and he'd get these techniques and these ideas and these philosophies. And then he would come home. And he would come home to the kids. He could do whatever he wanted to these guys. But he would do it. He would hit them with perfect techniques over and over. He would get his timing down. He would get his experience. He would get his confidence. And then you have the guys at the Olympic Training Center. They're going iron on iron every single day. And he shows up to the trials and he beats them all. And I'm just sharing with you, like, there's different training philosophies. And I have seen this work, what Bo did. Now, Bo's a special athlete. I get that. But there could be something to view here, which is that going out, getting a feel for it, probably not going great out there, then going home, you got a heavy bag, you're in your garage, you go get a buddy that doesn't even know, but you start working these techniques, right? You hear that practice makes perfect. It's not true. Perfect practice makes perfect. You'll hear that you got to have somebody that can push you. It's not true. You need somebody that can whip you, somebody that can push you, and somebody you can whip. If you don't have all three, you're not going to get much better. You must have all three. The guy that can whip you, you're not doing the new techniques to. The guy that can push you, you're barely doing the techniques to. The guy that you can whip, that's where now you're going out and you're hitting these positions. This is where you're getting the muscle memory. It's a very big deal. It's very interesting how Bo prepared and trained. It's very interesting how he convinced himself how good he was. He convinced himself he could beat Gordon Ryan in a grappling match and then almost did it. He was 90 seconds away from doing it. I mean, it's a very interesting thing. Bo says he's been at it 2 years. I did the math. Bo's been at it for 2 years.